what would you say are the key steps to follow when implementing a DataOps strategy, or maybe a certain skill set that they need to have? What are the key elements to that?
Yeah, great question. So my first advice is don't boil the ocean, right? We see a lot of companies kind of get lost in digital transformation in general, trying to make it this really CapEx, year-long, multi-year kind of initiative. And it's not that ultimately it's going to take that long potentially to get there, but it's actually not as difficult as some folks think. So the two mistakes I see people make the most is they start out with, hey, let's get all of our data into the cloud, right? And that's a lot of work. You're solving some pretty tough engineering problems. And at the end of the day, the data might not be actionable anyway, right? So that's a tough place to start. The other place we see folks go is, hey, we're going to do a proof of concept and we're going to write our own code to do some manipulation, contextualization, movement of the data, right? So we work with a lot of customers that kind of start and try to roll their own and then realize that they're not addressing the scale issue of data ops, because we got it to work in this one factory. Now we've got to go change the code. Now we're trying to maintain code. We make tractors or whatever. We don't write necessarily code. So they find themselves in that hole. The other piece is data ops, in my opinion, is use case driven. So like I said before, you're starting with OEE or you're starting with energy monitoring or some end goal that you want, and then you kind of work your way backwards to the data you need to try to prove out that use case. So I would think of it in terms of use cases, really similar to agile development, right? Like come into it, try to create a walking skeleton of how do we collect the minimal data we need, move that, contextualize that, get it into the application, and iterate quickly, right? My biggest advice when it comes to data ops and manufacturing is you're focused on, I call it the N+1 problem, right? Like we can build this pipeline, we can get the data, and as soon as we get the data in and we start looking at it and we learn, now we need something new. So we're going to have to go back down and like add additional data, manipulate the data, change the model, something. And what you're really focused on is, how do I reduce the cost of that change to near zero? So it's not like, can I get all the data to the cloud? It's not, can I perfectly model my data? It's okay, when I go to need to make a change at scale, how do I reduce the cost of doing that? And that's the data ops technology and process that's in there. And then, yeah, just so get started. So it's like you're building the proof of concept, but when you're doing that, you're not necessarily writing custom code or using, MQTT or UNS, for example, and building that out because well, once I have that component, I can continue to add and invest in that, and it's only going to pay back and make things easier as I go forward. So yeah, don't boil the ocean, iterate quickly, focus on use cases, and really always keep in your mind scale in terms of that N+1 problem.